Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Daphne Lage here. Join Nita Lanning and me on the Ragin' 2 the Vlogs show, where we talk about everything, nothing, and all the bits in between. Looking for hour-long conversations about indie comics, social media marketing, and crowdfunding, with the occasional rant and story time? Head on over to the Ragin' 2 channel on YouTube, Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern to join in the chat.
Hit the button.
Ed Gein, Demon Hunter, on Indiegogo. After a deranged demon escapes the bowels of hell, Satan is forced to send a damned soul back to Earth as a demon hunter. Armed with a sacrificial dagger, Ed returns to his old stomping ground to capture the demon before the universe is destroyed. Ed Gein, Demon Hunter. Issues 1 and 2 available now on Indiegogo. Prepare for the ultimate face-off.
We've crossed paths more than once. I've whispered in your ear, shown you harmless little temptations. I am unknowable, yet you know me intimately. But you can always know me better. Collected here are 20 twisted tales that will thrill, chill, incite, and delight you from some of the most imaginative minds your species has to offer. This exclusive Indiegogo printing of The Devil You Know Better will be limited and numbered, with signatures from Mike Barron and Hart D. Fisher. Stretch goals achieved for this campaign will add interior chapter illustrations by Stefano Cardacelli. The Devil You Know Better. Back it on Indiegogo today, while you still can.
And good evening. It is 7 o'clock Central Time, and it is time for the LCS Guys Show here on the Critical Blast Podcast. I am your host, RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor at CriticalBlast.com, Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Logistics, Myopic Proofreader for Critical Blast Publishing, and I do answer the phones for Critical Blast Consulting. So this is that night of the week when, the night of the 2 weeks, when we get together with as many LCS guys as we can, and we're blessed to always at least get one, normally one. Okay. But we're going to basically talk about the issues going on in the comic industry and the things that retailers themselves are thinking about as they watch things transpire. So, sometimes this is not official news from, the blessed agencies. This is, this is not what the generals are reporting from the Pentagon. This is what the privates are telling you are happening in the foxholes. So with that horrible analogy, let us now introduce our favorite LCS guy, Mr. Michael Tierney. Michael, how are things tonight?
Hey, doing great. How you doing there, RJ?
You know what? I went to the fridge and my count was off. I did not have a beer. So I'm like, oh, this is not a good night. So fortunately, I bought these 2 little sample things. I'm like, oh, peach. I like peach. Let's try that. I don't know if I'm supposed to mix this with salt and other stuff and put it in a glass or drink it straight from the bottle. So we'll find out, I suppose.
We'll judge by your expression.
Yes. So yeah, it's been 2 weeks now, and lots happened in comics. Dark Crisis has finally had all its spinoffs, and I've read it. I'm not as hyped as I was for things like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths had so many things happening in it, and you were like, I've got to get the next issue. There's too many things hanging, too many cliffhangers. Things are happening. People are dying.
Dark Crisis, a new thing when it first happened. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wow. Revolutionary.
Dark Crisis is Superman recruiting people and them telling him no. So something that maybe should have happened in a side issue of Dark Crisis, not the main line title, I would think. But
yeah, the interest isn't there, at least, not for my customers. So yeah, it's been kind of a disappointment. And you can only go back to the well so many times before it runs dry.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you the one I did enjoy that I picked up this week. The better Crisis that DC is doing is Flashpoint Beyond. That one's got some legs to it because that one seems to be. It's first of all, it's building off of Flashpoint itself, which was the thing that created the whole New 52. And at the same time, it's also bringing in all of that Doomsday Clock stuff, all that Watchmen crossover. So, are you familiar with the storyline on that one, Michael? Is anybody asking for that one?
No, I'm not really dealing with the back issues anymore. So, I don't see that kind of activity. But even when I still had my stores, it just the whole Doomsday Clock thing. When they tried to revamp it and bring it back, it just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, and it's like they're half of the story is taking place. The bulk of the story is taking place in this dark universe where Thomas Wayne is Batman. He knows the universe wasn't supposed to be there since Flashpoint. He's trying to make it disappear again so that Bruce's universe, the better one, is in place. And meanwhile, Bruce is messing around with Janie Slater's watch and Laurie Jaspeksik's snow globe, doing time experiments. Like, okay, that's all Watchmen stuff that you've got in your cave now. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting to see where that one's going to shake out at, because it's very much implied that they're going to bring Dr. Manhattan back to do something or other.
Yeah, but you get an all-powerful being like that, it's so easy to, okay, we're going to solve everything right now.
Yeah, so do it, please. Solve everything. You were talking. Go ahead.
They've been dragging out their stories too long. They just take too long for things to happen, and exceed that expiration of expectation. Like I always talk about, people just kind of give up. Like dragging it out. Foreshadowing sometimes is more like hitting them over the head with a sledgehammer.
Since DC realized they could really take advantage of their multiverse, and Marvel realized, oh, we have one too. Nothing seems to matter. Mm-hmm. In the comics. They were comic books anyway. Yes, we get that. That's not.
The sense of jeopardy is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. X-Men, they can raise the dead at will. On the island of Krakoa, there's a dead raising pit, like a Lazarus pit. And no side effects though, like a Lazarus pit. You just say, oh yeah, okay, you're back. We'll bring you back. Go die. We'll bring you right back. So,
I know.
And that was like one of the plots that didn't make sense in Marvel's Pride issue was, there's a new character going to go live on Krakoa to join the New Mutants or whatever. G is transgender, so that was what made it a Pride Month issue. But they're going because they had a vision of their, other mutant friend dying, and we're like, so just throw her in the pit if she dies. You don't have to, give up your life because you had a vision of somebody dying. Death means nothing. All the mutants are going to live forever now. X-Men 2099 will still be Cyclops and Jean Grey, and everybody else. They're all there. But you were talking
to Professor X lose his legs, get him back, lose his legs, get him back.
Oh man,
don't even care anymore.
Yeah. How many times have we seen him stand up? You're right. It's and like why are you in that chair when you have mutant healers? Never mind the pit. You've got, Wolverine just says, lay down, bub. Here's a transfusion. And it just everything would heal.
Yeah. Why is he bald still?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's to let the brainwaves out better. I mean, his hair was so thick that it was muffling his psionic abilities. So he had to shave it off. But you were talking about the other should be big thing nobody cares about anymore.
Yeah.
Because
remember how I talked about how angry everybody got about Batman 50. Hey, it's Batman and Catwoman. They're going to get married. Yes. And then, it's psych. All those parties everybody was throwing, hiring extra people, getting wedding cakes. It didn't happen. She stood up at the altar. Well, now in Batman, Catwoman 12, they decided to elope. And, in kind of a strange thing of storytelling, here you got Batman. He needs a couple witnesses. So, hey, Clark, do you mind? Bam. They're instantly there. Like, Lois didn't have time to say, hey, Lois, guess where we're going? He had to just grabbed her and zapped her there. And she wasn't fussing. Going, what did you just do? She's like, oh, okay. She's all cool with it. Like she's a mind reader and she knew where they're going. And
she's dressed for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just in an instant. Yes, I guess he dressed her with his super speed and took her there. Like, well, you'll figure it out when we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and the thing is, okay, this is billionaire Bruce Wayne, and Catwoman, who's not, but it's also Batman, who takes things very seriously. Mm-hmm. And the wedding, it's a Vegas wedding. And not only is it a Vegas wedding, it's a Batman themed Vegas wedding.
Yeah.
It'd be the last thing Bruce Wayne would do.
It's
the
stupidest. Was a Pow and a Socko appearing above their heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But talk about anticlimactic. I mean, everybody wanted to see it. Everybody was excited about it 50 issues ago, 4 years back. Now that it happens, again, expiration of expectations. You just don't tease something that long and then expect to have a reaction when you finally get around to doing it.
I mean, if they're going to go that route, I hope they overstep it. I mean, anything worth doing like that is worth overdoing. Have the preacher just draw Burt Ward there, as he is today, kind of chubby Burt Ward behind the thing. It says, "We are here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony," and just emphasize the words and then continue on.
I mean, when they killed Superman, they let us know he was going to die. We ordered tons of the heaviest ordered book I'd ever seen and had ever carried myself. I mean, ordered thousands of copies. I've never sold 1,000 copies of anything. I probably maybe ordered over 1,000 of the X-Men #1 by Jim Lee that I got stuck on. It took me a long time to move those babies until the pandemic. Then I was able to start selling as a set and finally got rid of them. But so I sold out within hours. I mean, it was just like everybody had to have that. And that book stayed valuable. I mean, I was still selling it for $30 a month later. And, a decade or two later, I was still selling it for $30 a pop. And the demand was always there. They told us, they got people interested. They delivered. Satisfied customers buy more. And it gave Superman quite a boom there for a long time. Well, now when you have a big event like, the Batman, if they tell you they're going to do something, they probably aren't. They're just hyping it. And then when they do something, they don't give you a clue. So then retailers aren't prepared for it. We don't have enough copies. Again, customers disappointed. It's not a good business move to disappoint your customers on a regular basis. I thought we were in business to sell books, not tease people with stuff that they can't have. I don't understand their logic.
And that's what they did with the original Catwoman Batman wedding. They told them something was coming and then it didn't happen.
Yeah, and as far as I know, because they had to make them returnable because they baited and switched all the retailers and they're like, hey, we want to send these back. You didn't do what you said you were going to do.
And from what I understand, Batman Catwoman, that little miniseries isn't even canon. It's not in, it's not impacting anything in the other books. Now, so if we come back next month and, Batman and Catwoman are married, then we'll say, okay, well, I guess all that stuff happened too.
Yeah.
Even though
my impression, and it was canon because it spun out it was supposed to be, those issues were supposed to be part of the regular Batman series. They decided to spin it out into its own miniseries and had another writer take over, kind of, Tinian, and go off in another direction. And it maintained its readers. I mean, its numbers were just as good, actually, maybe a little bit better than the regular Batman numbers were, because they kind of deteriorated some.
Well, Tom King had said that, yes, it's standing him up at the altar was the plan for number 50. Stick around for number 100. Like it was going to be another 50 issues before they were really going to get married. And now he had to do it for 12.
125.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
But they went through some bi-weeklies, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They went bi-weekly. I was about to say that.
Whew. Something else that happened in the news this week, and this would be something you'd be probably on top of, because you're a contributor to the Overstreet and you're there at the ICV2 and all that. The numbers came in. The numbers for sales came in, and apparently we're healthier. We're a healthier industry than we've ever been.
I know John Jackson Miller. We're Comic-Con. Great guy. He writes a lot of Star Trek novels, but I think it's not apples versus apples, because now they're pulling in the manga numbers, and they're pulling from other sources that were not being pulled from those earlier years that they're being compared against. I know everybody wants to say, "Oh, the comic book's doing better than it ever has." Store, but it's like, say me, I closed my 2 retail stores down. Well, you talk to my 2 competitors who are still around. Well, oh yeah, business went up for them. Yeah, but how much overall business they lose for me go down? Because they did not get all my business. And one, I kept a bunch of it, but they haven't had the increases that they would have if they'd gotten all my business. A lot of people just gave it up or did other things with their hobby, because the pandemic, hurt it. And then when they were, making things hard to get, the disruptions, you just don't disrupt people's reading habits, because it's hard to get them back. Once you change people's patterns, new patterns develop, and you may not be part of the new pattern. And it's just not accurate. I mean, and plus too, another thing that kind of throws it out is they're comparing overall dollar sales. And of course, with the manga, those are high dollar sales. They're not actually showing you actual units. I mean, if you go to how many issues is DC selling, how many issues is Marvel selling, compare what they did, and you're going to see a vastly different number. But they're not offering that information. And plus two, now he's pulling from Comics Hub. I guess they've got so many 100 stores or something like that they're pulling numbers from. The comic industry has expanded its distribution, because now you've got Penguin Random House, which gets comics into all the bookstores almost all around the country now. I mean, because these are guys have a lot wider reach and more prestige and standing in the book selling industry, than what Diamond has. It's just not accurate. And there's no way the actual comic book industry is healthier, selling more books than it was last year. Or, anything's easier to sell than what it was in 2020, because they stopped making them for a while. So, that was a disaster. Sure. There were so many books for 2020 that was solicited in January, February, didn't show until the next year.
Yeah, and I do understand that his numbers, and Hojo, you're right. It's sort of cooking the books the way that the numbers get hidden, and yes, it's a lot of manga. Although they've said they're only counting North American books published. They're not counting the Japanese books, except for Viz, which is in California, which has the manga license and everything. So, we're not getting the units, and we're getting high cost.
Yeah, it's kind of like the American car and the Russian car got in a race. The Russians finished, seconds, and the Americans next to last. I mean, you can paint numbers any way you want to.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, I'm trying to think where I was going with the numbers on this, but yeah, we went through a year where so many number ones, so many restarts, and obviously number ones always goose the numbers, because people are trying to, I want that number one issue. And then the cost for these books. Now, these were the books in 2021. So we had some 80th anniversary issues that were coming out for a lot of books. Those were $10 books, and they were making 8 to 10 variants of each one. Mm-hmm. So the true blue collectors who have to have everything were spending $80.
But guess what? There's not very many of those left. I mean, I was only one or two guys who would do that. Used to, you'd have so many people. That used to be the joke about the zombies. How they would just buy everything. They have exterminated the zombies. They've hunted them to extinction.
Yeah, Yeah, the Marvel Zombie doesn't really exist anymore.
Well, the variants are too hard to get. You can't get them all.
I know. I went to the comic shop I go to now for the occasional book, and I was like, oh, here's the issue of the book I want. And I picked up. I was like, oh no, this is a variant cover, and it's in a bag in a backer, and it says $25.99 on it. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want. I don't care that much. Wasn't even impressed with it.
Hundreds of copies or thousands of copies to qualify for it. You can't be a completist anymore. I don't think they realize how much they've damaged the industry doing that.
Yeah, and Hojo, you're right. They're not just afraid to admit they're losing to manga, because they're not just losing to manga, they're losing to Scholastic. Scholastic is putting out graphic novels by the score, and they have the widest distribution network in the country, known as the U.S. public school system, where they can go in and set up a pop-up fair and say, hey, parents, you want your kids to read, don't you?
I know. For so many years, I kept asking me, we need more all ages. I had so many kids come into my stores wanting to buy books, and all I had was just one couple racks. I had to make one section of their own because there was so little product out there. It didn't make any sense to mix them in with all the other stuff that might not be age appropriate. And I had such a huge customer base that wanted to buy books from me, but I had so little to offer them.
Yeah, and these people who are these kids who are reading Dogman, they're not transferring over to Spider-Man and Superman when they age out of it. They're, I used to read Dogman. I used to read Captain Underpants. Now I don't read at all. I play video games. So and so those are two manga and Scholastic. Those are two outliers that are now being like grouped in to say, look, sales are great because we got this, and we got comics. And by the way, the crowdfunding numbers are also spiking that up some too, because if they're looking at dollars, those crowdfunding books are expensive, and they sell enough to make quite a bit of money in crowdfunding. So.
But that's not a statement of the health of the industry.
No, it's not. No, a statement on the health of the industry is looking at 1990 selling 120,000 copies of Batman, and 2021 looking at 2021 looking at them selling 75,000 copies of Batman. It's a drop.
That's a pretty significant drop, yeah.
And even if they went to copies, what they would end up probably doing is saying, well, DC is selling more copies of books than they did in 1997. DC and Marvel both are putting out more titles than they were in those books, so they're spreading themselves thin, and adding up those small stacks into one big stack, so to speak.
I'm a little bit worried about DC right now. Again, another week, nothing offered on their FOC. 2 weeks in a row, I have not received my DC Directive upcoming publications. They keep getting crossed off the invoice from Lunar. I'm like, are they even going to do another catalog? I've never seen that happen before. And then, like I say, this is like the third week in not that long time period where, nope, no DC is being solicited this week. That's just unheard of so many times. I
wonder if there's something going on in the background there where they're like, maybe trying to cycle things down a little bit. Warner did get bought out by this guy, and he is taking the hatchet to things. Yeah, and of course, they don't tell us what's going on. I mean, didn't know anything about Catwoman. I mean, DC could be planning to close it all down. They wouldn't give us a hint. So, yeah, I don't think that could be what's happening. That'd be very foolish if it were. But I'm just like, they're doing things that just don't make any sense. But hey, this is the comic book industry. When did publishers ever do things that made any real common sense? So. Well, does DC even have a publisher right now? I mean, I remember Daniel Cherry left, and I've heard nothing about who took his place. Yeah, they've changed hands a couple of times in a short period of time, and there does not seem to be any kind of a plan there as far as what they're going to go direction. Right now, it's just let's keep up chugging out the Batman. They hardly make any ongoing series. That's what really sells. It's just all these miniseries after miniseries, which never have a chance to build up an audience or a readership. And you can't just keep slapping number ones on there. Because I've got one customer who says, "I'll take all the new number ones from Marvel and DC," and I mean that's about all he gets anymore. It's just the number ones because there's all the series he wanted to get on a regular basis. They don't make them anymore. They're just just new number ones, and then restart everything again. Well, Spider-Man, the writers was number one again. The writers don't know how to write long term. They don't have basically the soap opera experience because the comic books used to be, an issue told a story, and then maybe it'd be 2 issues told a story, and yet at the same time, there was character growth with all the background players. You knew, you knew Clark Kent's next door neighbors, May and June, the Marigold sisters, for crying out loud. They were twins. See, I know that and he lived at I forget now what on Clinton Avenue, 221 something B Clinton Avenue. I say I remember now, I can't get it out, but I used to know his apartment number and his street address because things happened and things progressed. But to do that, you have to have a soap opera mentality to have the long story. Now it's just like, I'm writing a graphic novel told in 6 to 12 chapters, and we're going to use the magazine to get it out with, and it's not going to impact anything either in the past or in the future. It's just my story for right now.
Yeah, and the way they tell stories, it's like if you take all the classic movies, the best movies that you want to watch over and over again, you can pick them up almost at any point, and doesn't matter that you've missed the earlier parts. It'll just take you and carry you from that point. Nowadays, I mean, you just don't know what's going on. You can't find your way in. It doesn't also, it doesn't matter that I don't know what's happening. What's happening now is interesting, and I just want to follow it on through. And they're just not written that way. I mean, you don't have the connection. They just don't know how to talk to the reader anymore. I mean, they're getting people who really aren't that comic savvy writing comics. People who have a lot of name recognition, reputation for writing stories like that for a real long period of time. Well, they don't get work in the comic book industry. They go for these unknown people. They'll hire somebody. Hey, you fit our demographics of what we're socially trying to grind an axe with. So we want you to write the comic. And these people haven't even read a comic. They go read a bunch of up and then retell what they just read as a new story. Yeah. And they don't know how to use the medium, and because comics is really a unique form of storytelling, because you've got everything you've got in a book, you've got everything you've got in a movie, plus you've got that fourth wall where you can hear their thoughts. Of course, right now comics, a lot of times they've done away with that. Won't have thought balloons much anymore. Don't have the caption panels giving you thoughts anymore. But that was always a great extra avenue of breaking that fourth wall to give it extra dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, American Comics Company, glad to see you out there. In fact, I was talking with somebody the other day about, they didn't like too much narrative in the book, that it should just be all action. Like, we had a lot of words back in the 70s and in the 80s, but, they were all interesting. They weren't, sitting down and talking about coffee while they're at their local Starbucks and saying, well, okay, when we go to get Thanos, I think what we ought to do is this. Boy, this shawarma is really good.
Yeah, you can have side things. It's like there was one writer back in the 70s, Don McGregor. He was the wordiest of them all. And what was bad about Don is he'll have a whole panel, half the panel's taken with a caption that's describing what you're seeing. Don't repeat the information. If the artist told you that, if it's in the image, you don't need to tell us what we're looking at. We can see that. What the written word is supposed to do is give you added information. You can't get it any other way.
Exactly. I mean, make the dialogue interesting. And the narrative doesn't have to be, narrative boxes should be like meanwhile, or their place shifts so that oh, I'm not in the same place. Where am I at? And then you can say, meanwhile, at the police station. Oh, I'm at the police station now. Thank you. I didn't know that.
Exterior locator shot. Okay, you switch scenes. You're in a new location. I don't think they know how to do that in stories nowadays. They'll all of a sudden switch things around, but they don't help you make that transition as a reader. And so then you just get a jumble of a story. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, it's like you said, they hire these writers for the demographics they try to reach. So they're not really hiring writers so much as they're casting them.
Right, exactly.
We need this type of a person to write this story. Rini Strakowski is doing a crowdfunding book called Fiendish right now. She did a lot of work for Marvel, and she was doing Silk, and she's a monster girl. See, she wants to write and draw monsters. Mm-hmm. She's also Asian American, so Marvel was saying, yeah, we know you want to write monsters. We're going to give you the cute manga kind of stuff because you're Asian. Stay in your lane, girl. And she finally had enough of it and went the crowdfunding route. And and they don't like that. they kind of bullied her for it for a while, and a lot of people had to stand up for her. But
yeah, creativity. I mean, you want to enhance that, get people to explore it. And but no, it's more of an agenda type of thing now. We want to do this. We want to fit these certain type of pegs into certain type of holes, and oh, that peg doesn't fit. We don't want nothing to do with that peg. It's kind of like they're biased against creating comics for kids. A monster audience out there. I remember when Finding Nemo broke all sorts of box office records. I mean, I'd love to get a fraction of that. Was there a Finding Nemo comic? No. Would it have sold? Oh yeah, big time. People asking for it. They missed so many marketing opportunities. I remember, and it's been like this for a long time. I remember when X-Men had their first X-Men movie, and it just blew up. Was there any X-Men take advantage of that? No. I mean, just they missed so many opportunities. I remember one time when one summer where absolutely none of the comics had the characters anything like what they were appearing like in the movie. And, so I'd have somebody come in, I'm here to get Wolverine. Oh, well, now it's a little girl by the name of X-23. Like, what? Okay, well, give me the Hulk. Well, now it's Hulk is a She-Hulk. And, well, give me Iron Man. Well, no, now Iron Man's a young black girl. All right, and it just went on and on and on. And this guy's like, okay, give me Hulk. It could not find anything of the characters that they were seeing in the movies to buy in a comic. And the guy's like, man, you're just punking me. You're just messing with me. They can't not be making any of these. I'm like, I'm sorry, but they aren't. He left, didn't buy a thing because he didn't have any of the product that he'd gotten sold on at the theaters. None of it was available in the comic book stores.
They haven't stopped. I mean, the Doctor Strange movie came out, and who's Doctor Strange? Clea.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean,
they haven't learned anything.
You got this huge vehicle driving people to the stores. Like, hey, that was fun. I want to go get more of that in the comic books. Oh, no, we don't sell what you're interested in. We're not taking advantage of the marketing opportunities. We have no synergy going with all these movies that are really, getting the awareness of comics raised to another level. But yeah, we don't want to sell anything like that.
Well, they might start getting the lesson, because it looks to me, and it's just my observation, that the movies have been speed running through comic book history to tell the stories again. And they're trying to rush them into the way the comic books are now to catch up to the comics. They've killed Tony Stark. They've retired Steve Rogers. Who knows what's going on with the Hulk? Thor, I don't know where Love and Thunder is going to end up. It might be Thor still Thor. Might be Jane Foster is Thor. But if they do that, if they get Riri Williams into the Iron Man suit, it'll do one of two things. It will either drive the people who saw those movies to come buy the books that now do exist, or the people seeing the movie will be like, no, what happened to Captain America? What happened to Iron Man? I'm not in for this. And that the movies tank, that's the $1 billion industry that they're trying to keep afloat.
We're more of a experimental ground, testing ground for the product, and they're not really thinking about selling the product. I will give them credit for one thing. They did do a one-shot Jane, Thunder, Jane Foster, but it's not a series. I don't know. They certainly aren't helping comic retailers achieve the chart success that they claim we're achieving, which it's not.
Yeah. Now at the same time, when we've talked before, you have said that Marvel Comics are starting to sell again. They're on the uptick.
Yeah. Well,
so what are they doing right?
Well, they're putting books out. I mean, and they're keeping the series going. I hate that they restarted Amazing Spider-Man again. It's like they all just call them volume numbers. At least that way you can still keep track of it sequentially. But at the same time, guess what? They would have been up to about 1,000 now. Now we're going to have Amazing Fantasy, 1,000 come out. But then they're going to make that into a miniseries. And the miniseries, they got to get away from that and get back to the regular ongoing series, because that's where I'm seeing the big numbers at. That's what really sells. Because the miniseries, you got to rebuild your audience all over. That's why the weekly comics, when they used to try to do that, back a couple of decades ago, never worked. The New 52 and so many other things. DC tried that for a couple of years. I have a 1-year story that was 52 issues because you didn't have a chance to build your audience. And, the book's got to have a little shelf life, get a little time for people to absorb that story, get ready for the next one. It's like, you're not going to build a strong, using TV as an example. If a series just runs, 6 nights in 1 week, well, it's not going to build up the audience it would if it was running once a week, over 6 weeks. I mean, you're going to have more time for people to talk about it. Hey, did you see that? I want to check that out. It's here, it is gone. And, that format never did work. It's the same thing with the comics. The miniseries, they fell in love with it because, hey, this is something we can just, do this new idea. The creative people don't want to stick around very long anymore. And but the ongoing series, they need to get back to that, because that's the stuff that really does sell well for me, and it's reliable. For as a retailer, it's great because I've got X amount of people who are going to buy this every time. Bam, I know what to order. Oh, now we're going to spin it off of this other thing where we're teaming up Wolverine with Moon Girl. How many people are going to want that? Well, maybe all the Moon people, but not all the Wolverine people. And she puts us in a guessing game of what to stock. And that's when you buy on a non-returnable basis, that kind of hurts.
Yeah, because you used to have the returnable basis, but the non-returnable basis is what the entire direct market was. That was the hook for the publishers. It's like, oh, they don't get returnability. By golly, yes, let's support this direct market concept. Have a store just for our stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's not many items that can support themselves in an industry that's just for their stuff.
Yeah, I'm about a couple of days away from being done writing that Robert E. Howard chronology. By the time I have the next show, I'll be done with it, and then I'll be working on building the pages. But I was noticing on the circulation statement reports, and like one other thing of interest was Conan Saga. And as like one report, they were showing that at that time they were, in the late 80s, they were printing like 183,000 copies. But that was primarily being sold through newsstand. So once they got all the returns and the damages back, actual distribution was like 63,000.
Ah, okay.
Jump ahead a few years. Now you're at the direct sale market. Now this was the early 90s. This was the peak in the heyday of the direct sale market. That's when we were, really booming. I mean, I was doing, 2-3 times my monthly volume at my highest peak of any other time. And I mean, it was really great back in the early 90s. After Superman died, the comic book industry really peaked. And there's now the print runs were down to about 123,000. You think, oh, well, they're not doing as well. Because they showed zero returns. I guess they'd given up on the newsstand because they didn't show any newsstand returns at all. They were showing zero damages, zero returns, and bam, there was 123,000 sold. So they were making a third less books in printing, so a third less of their cost to manufacture it, zero returns, and so they were selling actually twice as many as they normally did. So you got double the sales with a third less of the expense. I mean, that's like how could you not want to keep on keeping the direct sale market healthy? I mean, now again, that was a peak, so that was probably an outlier type of a number in there, because they only would report those once a year, but and they didn't always do that. But it just shows you how important the direct sale market is to the comic book industry, how we turned it around. And that's one thing, why manga was doing really good for a while, is because we were buying non-returnable manga when they first started booming. Well, then the chain stores wanted them, and they gave those guys where they got the books before us, they got to sell it less than our cost, and they got returns on that too. Well, once all those returns started going back, it knocked a lot of those publishers out of business because there was no profit left for them. But at the same time too, they also knocked all the direct sale market, all those 100% sale guaranteed customers out, because like, well, hey, they're getting it before me. Only time I get anybody is they're looking for ones they sold out of, and that's not that much. I mean, every retailer in America got burned at the same time. And all the direct sale retailers, and we all quit carrying manga at the same time because it didn't sell for us anymore. I mean, there for a while, manga was huge. I mean, there'd be times I'd be like the only adult man in the store all day because I had all these teenage girls coming in to buy the manga. It was doing huge for me. And we really built up the market, and then they gave it to the chain stores.
Yeah, and there's not really, I mean, somebody told me there was one out there, but I don't think a lot of people are using it. There's no real point of sale tracking to know, once the book is at the store, what its next step is. Like a lot of grocery stores, and I've worked for grocery store corporates before and handled the data processing. Same with when I was working for a cosmetics company, we were getting point of sale. We knew not only when the store bought that tube of lipstick, but we knew when that tube of lipstick went over a scanner and into a grocery bag. So we knew exactly what we were selling, and those sales were true sales. Diamond and the others, they report what they sold to you because you're the end customer as far as they're concerned. And what did retail shops buy? And
as far as they're concerned, we sold every single copy of everything we got in, which is not happening and never did.
Never
happen.
True.
Yeah, I mean,
never true at all.
Some certain books, but for the majority of it, no. And we were building backstock. Used to, when I started in the business, you wanted to build a backstock. Now, the logic is to no, don't build any backstock. If you sell out of it, great. But because they just keep making so much stuff, and the amount of books they make is so much more than what they used to make. But two is you're going to get a backstock anyway from all the stuff that didn't sell, and so that's just eating all your profits up of the books that you did sell. in the dead stock that goes to the back. And as the cover prices kept getting higher and higher, that just got to be nastier and nastier bath on you. I mean, it just kept chewing you alive. And then, of course, you put throwing all the shrinkage from shoplifters on top of that, and it got ugly pretty quick.
Yeah, and you talk about cooking the books, Hojo, as you mentioned earlier. I did call up Diamond one time to get a report on how these numbers were calculated because I had a very specific question. And this is, and I don't think it happens that often, and you'd be able to tell me more than anybody else. But you order 10 copies of a book, and they ship you 20 because they want to overship it. I think one of the classic examples was Iceman. They like double shipped all the Iceman numbers. Now, of course, you still got to pay the shipping on that because your box weighs more. So you're paying the extra shipping, but you didn't have to pay for the book. So, hey, that's free money. You sell the book if you sell the book. Yeah.
Well, two things. They did used to give us a credit for overships to help cover for that shipping expense. But one thing I always notice is anytime somebody did an overship, I actually had less sales of that issue than I did when I was ordering when I knew it. Because people come in like, oh, a big old stack, that ain't selling, or I'll come back later. And, you actually would sell less of something than you knew what numbers you could sell. You were ordering what you could sell. And when you got extra copies sitting out there, it just does something to the mentality of when people see that big stack, like, yeah, that must be a turkey. Nobody's buying it. Or I'll come back and get it later, and later never happens.
That's why you put 5 copies up and hide the other 150 copies behind the shelf.
That's what I had to do. Yeah. Because if I didn't, it wouldn't work. Yeah. But even then, if I was hiding all the copies and leaving my normal out, I'd still see the exact same sales. I mean, the overships, retailers know what we're doing. We know what we can sell. We're ordering for what we can sell. And, or at least I was. I guess I can't speak for all the other retailers in the country. But, it just overship never really helped much. Just gave you a lot of dead stock to throw in the back in the store. And maybe throw out your 50-cent bin, try to move them that way.
Yeah. And well, Marvel Diamond did confirm to me that these overships, they counted those as sales. If it moved out of the warehouse, it was a sale. So if you ordered 5 and they shipped you 50, they sold you 50.
Yeah.
And that's, what that would be the number they reported. So if anytime Marvel wanted to boost sales on something, all they had to do was say overship.
Yeah. It's kind of like Diamond used to say they had 2,000 retailers, or I forget how many they tried to say, but they counted anybody who had an account with them as a comic book store. And like there used to be a bait and tackle shop here in Arkansas that had a little rack of some comics. Bam, they're a comic book store, according to Diamond.
Well, there are places you can buy comics.
You want some minnows with that?
What's that?
Want some minnows to go with your
X-Men? Oh, yeah. Put the Aquaman books over there by the bait.
Yeah, give me a book of tadpoles while you're at it.
Oh, man. So what do you find that's selling this month, Mike? What's
It's the same as it's always there, but it's the titles that keep going, that have high numbers that people know that they can rely on it. And, that's what keeps the readers. And miniseries, I'll have some people try them from time to time, but a lot of times these miniseries, people don't even want to finish them out. They're like, I don't even care. I've lost interest. And they're just not connecting with people. And you got to build that readership up. And, if you want to keep, change out the creative teams, change it out within an ongoing series. Because one thing I've always noticed is even when people aren't liking what a series is doing, they'll tend to hang on to it. Because I couldn't tell you when I started business, how many people told me, oh man, I quit carrying Daredevil, I quit buying it the issue before Frank Miller started.
Yep.
So when you're dedicated and you're invested in a book, you're like, yeah, but it might get good about the time I quit. And so they'll hang into it even when it does go through a down spell, because there's always that hope it's going to get better. And get away from the miniseries, get back to ongoing series.
Yeah, it's easier to quit a miniseries because like this thing's got 3 more issues to go. There's no way it's coming back from this, and nothing ever happens in the 3rd or 4th issue of a miniseries that makes it collectible. It's always going to be the number 1.
Exactly. Yeah, and so there's no investment in the reader to keep on going. If it's not really just nailing it with you, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah, I've noped out of Heroes in Crisis was the first miniseries I started that I quit on the penultimate issue. I read that. I'm like, I don't even care where this thing goes now.
Right. Yeah. You don't do that to the readers. You got to satisfy them. Like I said, satisfied readers are going to buy a whole lot more than a dissatisfied one.
Yeah. And I've seen too many comics since Heroes in Crisis try to replicate that whole 3x3 grid of the face just staring at you, and making slight changes and giving you a psychological profile of themselves. I didn't like that back in the day when Keith Giffen was doing it. And that goes back a ways when he would just be like, same face. Like, dude, you're not even trying to tell the story now.
And those don't help you sell books on the shelf either, because people look at it, I've already got that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Michael, I don't know what else is going on that we could delve into here. We're kind of a little short. We got 15 minutes to go for the top of the hour, but again, it was Pride Month. Did you sell a bunch of DC Pride and Marvel Pride?
Nope.
No. Okay. Because your stuff is, you only sell what the customer asks for now, since you're in the mail order business.
I don't gamble anymore and say, well, maybe people come in and want that. And that used to burn me so bad because, as a retailer, I felt like I had to give everybody the full selection of everything that's offered. And there's so much stuff that it just would bomb. I mean, you learn pretty quick, okay, well, this writer's taking over that book. Well, the reader's going to be leaving it because there are just certain people that whatever they write, it goes, sales just drop on it. And, I know I was saying earlier about how they'll stick through it, but there's some writers like, no, even those guys get on a book, it's going to drop. And I don't want to say any names because I don't want to trash them out, but you just learn pretty fast. Like if somebody's writing a book, that book's probably going to get canceled pretty quick because they just have that history. I mean, one guy, I guess I wouldn't be trashing him out because he's had such a huge success with X-Men, was Chris Claremont. He's a perfect example of that. Everything else he ever wrote got canceled. But boy, with the X-Men, he had it going. Well, then they kicked him off the book and said, "Oh, we don't need a writer. The artist can come up with a story." Found out that wasn't true. Kept trying to get Chris Claremont back on doing X-Men again, and never found the magic again.
Once they stopped his momentum, he was like, I could pick up from where I left off and carry forward, which is what John Byrne is doing. Yeah. John Byrne's got his online X-Men comic that's like just, hey, you remember when I stopped working? Yeah, well, I'm just telling the stories on my page like I was still there and drawing them, and people are loving that stuff.
Just if you find the magic, you don't want to snuff it out. I mean, just
exactly.
Creating stuff and a connection with the reader, give people what they want. I mean, you'd think those would be axioms that would not be so unique in the thinking of publishers, but it really is. I mean, they just for some reason like, oh, we got a better idea. The fans don't know what they really need to be reading. I had times where publishers start saying, well, you're not doing the right job. You're not selling what we want to make. I'm like, it's not my job to sell what you want to make. It's my job to get the customers what they want to buy. It's that simple. And I don't care what it is. If they want a Gay Pride Month comics, I would have carried a bunch. Just whatever the customers want, that's what I'm going to sell. And I'm not going to dictate terms to you. Say, okay, well, this is what you should be reading. No, that's not my job. My job is to satisfy the customers. And it's like one of the things I always told anytime I hire a new employee, I said, look, this is not really a sales job. This is a customer satisfaction job. I said, if a customer comes in and says, I want this, and you've got a choice of a $5 item or a $50 item, don't necessarily push for a $50 item. Tell them about both and let them decide which it is they want. If they go for the $5 item, well, they're going to be saying, hey, this guy's taking care of me, and I'll keep going back to them because they're going, they're not just out to get my money. And that's why I've been around 40 years is just you satisfy the customer. I keep saying it over and over again, but it's like when I kept saying it over and over again, hey, kids want to buy comics. Like, no, kids don't want to read comics. They got video games to play. No,
they'll read comics if they're good comics to read.
Right.
Neil Gaiman made I'm paraphrasing because I would never want to misquote somebody, but Neil Gaiman had a statement out a while back about fans. And, he said, you listen to the fans. The fans will tell you, hey, that thing you did. More of that thing, please. I like that thing. And exactly. What you do is you make that thing. Ironically, now Neil's supporting necessarily the changes that were made to his Sandman story for Netflix because they've hired an actress who looks absolutely nothing like Death at all. And he's like, well, the Endless could always change their appearance. They change their appearance all the time. I'm like, yeah, I know they didn't. Very, very, very little did they ever change their appearance. Like Dream did it once. Yes, Dream did appear as an African-American one time to somebody, but guess what? He was an albino and his skin was still chalk white and his hair was still black and spiky. And you could tell by looking at him, oh yeah, that's still Dream. Death never changed her appearance.
Well, Neil Gaiman was a pretty smart guy. And he's like, you don't want to piss off the people who are making your books into movies and, like, oh yeah, I'm going to work with you. Yeah, that's the sign of a good employee. Is like you work with people like, hey, this is what we want to do. I'm all in.
I think Neil's more. I don't think he's saying it. and I'm, not trying to read his mind, but I think he's more in the mind of Alan Moore right now. When Alan Moore was asked about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen when they made that movie, and Alan was like, well, what am I to think about it? I mean, somebody came to me and said they wanted to make a movie that coincidentally had the same title as one of my books, and here's a bucket of money for the privilege. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Alan Moore, he wasn't so much of a team player. He wasn't. He was always telling you like, this is awful, this is terrible, I hate what they're doing. It's like, remember when they offered him $75,000 for the Watchmen movie, and he just refused to take it. They give it to the artist, of course. They give it. It's like, I'll take it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
get on over. Yeah, and but you can tell he's done so well. He really, Alan Moore's one of those kind of half empty glass kind of guys, in that. He lucked into the sweetheart deal of a lifetime, but it wasn't the deal he expected, so he's been mad about it ever since. Back when he was writing The Watchmen, back then I was trying to tell Marvel DC guys, graphic novel reprints will sell. I mean, there's demand for them in the store. I mean, I package them and they'll sell as fast as I can make them. And they kept telling me, there'll never be a market reprint collections. And when they finally tried it with Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, they're both still in print today. Yeah. But the contracts didn't have reprint rights in there. So these guys were still getting paid first print money on these reprints. And like I was talking to Bob Schreck one time, and he was the Batman editor, during the late 80s and 90s. And he told me all through the 90s, Frank Miller did no work for DC. But the royalties of Dark Knight Returns alone, because that was still a huge book back then, he was still their highest paid freelancer, just off the royalties off that one book.
Yeah, and that's because he had the contract for the 4 issues, and they just reprinted and like, well, we still got to pay him because of the rate on the 4 issues. Yeah,
he was still getting first print money. Well, same thing with Alan Moore on Watchmen and V for Vendetta and so much other stuff. They kept those graphic novels stayed in print, but they didn't have reprint clauses in their contracts, so they were still getting first print money. So that's why he could just like $75,000. I'll thumb my nose at that. That's beneath me to cash that check at pittance. I'm just insulted you even offer me. It just was all angry. But see, he was mad. He thought he was going to get the Watchmen back, because when he first pitched the idea, and this is off of his own book, I think it's called Exit Strategy or Exit something. I did a review on it, and this is him talking about this. So this is me paraphrasing, but he was wanted to do the Charlton Heroes, because they just got.
I do remember that.
But they were about to do this Impact line of comics, and they wanted to make them own heroes. And they're like, we don't know about to make them grim and gritty. Tell you what, just do your own version of them, and just call them new names. And then you own the rights to them. Once the book after it's printed, you get the rights back. It's like, oh, great. I'm creating all new stuff for me. All right, sure, I'll do that. Well, then it's still in print, still got the graphic novels going. And that's why he was mad about, because he thought he was getting the rights back and those characters would be his again. And it never has happened. Decades have gone by. He's feeling like he's been cheated all this time, but he's been getting paid first print money all this time. That's a sweetheart deal that any other creator said, yes, sign me up, please. Yeah, that's all right. I'll create other stuff.
Unless he had a story in mind that he absolutely had to tell with those characters, and I can't see that he did. And now I can see DC keeping that in print, and they're his characters. What I don't know how they did was when they did before Watchmen. Because it's like, wait a second now, you don't have a contract with Alan Moore to use his characters on everything else in the world.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they worked all that out. I've never read any in-depth stuff on that one, but Alan Moore was a heck of a creative guy, and he could take like a beat down character like a Swamp Thing and all of a sudden make him like the best thing around. Swamp Thing was pretty cool when you had Lin Wynn and Bernie Wrightson doing it, but then after they left, it went downhill for quite a long time until O'Neill comes in with a creative imagination, like, let's reinvent this, and took Swamp Thing and really made it into a big deal. And he did well. And he was a good writer. And Alan Moore, just everything he touched turned to gold. And so he was convinced that when they bought, because he got rid of DC, he said, I want to hook up with this image company that Jim Lee's running. And then Jim Lee sells the company to DC, and Alan Moore's like, they just bought that just to get me again, And
of course.
And what Jim Lee would do is this is all in the public record. He said, he didn't make Alan Moore have to take a check from DC. That Jim Lee would write him a personal check. Oh, here's the money you're ordering, so that way you don't have to deal with DC. And so Moore has a lot of animosity on that. He got a sweetheart deal, but it wasn't a deal he expected, so he's going to be mad about it.
He did good books for America's Best Comics, which was DC.
But that's another thing too. But then that in the middle of doing that, that's when it all gets sold over to DC, and he just mailed it in at the end. I think he had a really great idea. If he put the effort into it to complete it, those would probably have been still in print. Those would have been probably like Watchmen as far as the quality and the sense of direction, because he had a long-term plan and it had a wrapping point, and you could tell when it finally wrapped up, like, yeah, that would have been pretty good if he stayed on it like he was going to, but he just got mad. So that's it. I'm just mailing it in from here. And he was in his exit interview or whatever it was called. He was talking about how he was born on a street corner with something like 4 or 5 crusades, assembled to go off to fight in the Middle East. And he's still got that tilting at a windmill crusade type of attitude there. He's marching off to war himself.
Well, I don't know if he's writing anything these days, but he probably doesn't have to. Like you said, the Watchmen money alone is keeping him healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, of course, he gets royalties from the movies, but I don't think he even watches those movies. I don't think he's.
No, he doesn't want to know about the movies. Really, he doesn't want his name. Never wants his name put on them.
Uh-huh.
And like, what movies does he have? He has League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which,
yeah,
I liked the concept, but as soon as they made the Nautilus, which was like 3 city blocks long, make a right angle turn in the canals of Venice, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, that's like you'd be banging the buildings and stuff. Like, no, you can't do that.
I love what Sir Sean Connery said. He said, well, they offered me Lord of the Rings. I read the script. It didn't make any sense, so I turned it down. Then they offered me the Star Wars. I read the script. Didn't make any sense to me, so I turned it down. Then they offered me League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Didn't make any sense to me, but I wasn't turning that one down. Well, that was the one he should have turned down.
Yes, he learned there 3 strikes in your ass. Like, no, take this comic book stuff.
Take the wrong one out of the 3.
Well, not only did he take League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but before that he even took Highlander 2. So
wow, yeah. Highlander 1, one of the best movies ever. Highlander 2, one of the stinkiest movies ever.
Yeah, but you know what? I think he would prefer that everybody talk about Highlander 2 and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and debate it into the ground just so that nobody ever remembers the Avengers.
Oh, that was pretty rough too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Sean Connery and a giant teddy bear head. Did he read the script of that one and say yes, or did he just like just give me a movie, guys? Just give me a movie, guys. I'll take whatever you've got.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't be James Bond. Never say never again.
Oh no.
He was so good at that. Even at his advanced age, he could still pull it off.
Yeah, I'd love to see. Well, I'm not going to see him do anything now, am I?
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen him do an old Bond, like do like a Dark Knight Returns James Bond kind of movie, whereas like some old villain returns and nobody knows him better than Bond. We got to find him, and here they fly off to this secluded island villa that's like the prisoner island, and he's like in a white bathrobe and swims trunks and just sipping a martini. So, what do you guys want? I'm not going back.
How on Facebook the scroll button is your best friend. Sometimes like don't get there. Some guy was talking about how he watched those early James Bond movies and they were very unimaginative, very uncreative, and just flat out boring. It was like, dude, that's because you've watched everybody imitate those things probably your entire life. Now you're going back to the original source material. Like, well, that doesn't seem original at all. And but at the time, it was original. It was groundbreaking, and it was pretty exciting stuff. But when you watch all the imitators later, you don't appreciate. Well, this is the guy who did it first.
Yeah, I've been there before. You're like they're copying. Well, you got to remember, Mike. Nothing existed before 2000. Everything that people are discovering from the old stuff, you bring it out. It's like they just made this and made it look old. But it's true. There are a lot of people who they have not looked at anything past 2000. They haven't experienced anything of the old stuff. The world was just created then, and it's a mess, and we're trying to make it messier or better.
Yeah, just rewrite that history. If you don't like it, erase it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we did reach the top of the hour. Good deal. We just had to talk a little bit about some Sean Connery and get things moving. All right. Well, Mike, glad to have you on again for another episode of the LCS Guys.
Always fun.
I'm going to reach out. I did reach out to Dave Dyer. He's on the road. He couldn't pop in. He texted while the show was going on here. So, he still wants to come in, still wants to talk. We still want to have him. Just, God, scheduling sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just something I'm going to have to think about and revisit.
Well, by the time the next show runs,
2 weeks.
I should be done with the Robert E. Howard chronology. And the Wild Stars 5 should be in print.
Oh, excellent. Then we'll have that up the show. Speaking of in print, folks, this is on Amazon, and you can find it out there if you look up The Devil You Know Better, Critical Blast, just to get past all those other Devil You Know things that are out there. This is the paperback version. There is a link below this video. The first one you'll see is to Michael Tierney's thewildstars.com, where you can find all of his books. But after that one, we have a campaign going. We have a hardcover version of that book you saw. To be taller, to be wider. It'll be about 300 pages. It's going to be signed by Mike Barron and by Hart Fisher, and it's going to be numbered. So it's going to be a very limited edition. Whatever we sell in the Indiegogo, that's what we sell. We're not going in demand. We're hard cut off. It will be a very limited print run. So if you want in on that, $25 for a double signed numbered hardcover, there's your deal. Mike, we'll see you again in 2 weeks, I guess. I hope.
Yeah, I hope to be here.
And
that's the plan.
Yeah, everybody in the chat, so glad you were here to join us. We're just a podcast falling in the woods if you're not here. So we're always glad to have somebody to talk to out there. And while you were here, as always, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.